Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and today I'd like to take a look at the X-MAXX, and in particular we're going to have a look at the spur gear and the lay shaft there, because I know people have a lot of problems with their spurs and pinions on these, so it's good to do a bit of preventative maintenance, check the screws every now and then, and check the conditions of the bearings. So let's jump into this big boy and have a look. Start by taking the body off. Such a big rig, this thing. Okay, now we can see over here on the overhead cameras, everything comes crashing to the floor. I want to remove this gear cover and get access to it. So first of all, I suppose the best thing is to get all the loose dirt and dust off. So for that, I've got a cleaning brush right here. I'm going to just scrape in here, make sure that no dirt and debris can actually get in, like so. Okay, next step is I'm going to actually take the motor out. Undo the motor screws, and that gives me the opportunity to get all the dirt from under there as well. So I'm going to take my 2.5mm driver here, once I get the right one, these 4 screws. Now these should be nice and firm. Also pays to check these periodically to make sure that they're not coming loose, because that can also be the cause of misaligned gears causing to damage. Okay, get these out. You can see there's a bit of dirt and grime here, what you'd expect. Got my little parts tray, try and keep myself organised. Yeah, I don't think this truck wasn't making any untoward noises and performing fine. This is really just a bit of preventative maintenance and try and catch any worn or damaged parts before we have a failure. Okay. These little 9-steps tools are fantastic for something like this. Okay, gonna flip it back over. Here we have, yep, so I can just wiggle that a little bit. We can see in fact that the motor is loose. Now I just have to see where exactly the screws are. Get the gear cover off the top now. Now I can see here that this X-MAXX is far from new. It's a couple years old. This is the 8S model, so it is the updated version. We've done all sorts of stunts with this. Really been quite a good car. Really enjoy using it. Okay. Okay, now I've got those 2 screws off, so now the gear cover can come out of the way, like so. Pop that off to the side, and should be as easy now as lifting the motor up and back out of the way. There we go. Now you can unplug the motor from the car itself and make sure your fan wires aren't all caught up. You can see here there's no real dirt and debris around the pinion gear too much. The pinion gear is tight. I can see that we're running the 18 tooth version. Everything seems nice there. Like I said, the truck itself was running well. So down here, if you have a look deep into the chassis here, might need to get a close up. If we can come over the top of the motor there, we've got these locating pins. We want to make sure that while we're carrying out this repair, that we don't lose those pins. These pins locate the motor mount and ensure that we've got correct gear mesh. So you can see here that we've got them in 2 pins, pin I and pin I, and if we go to our chart here, that tells us that we've got either an 1854, a 2250 or a 2646 gear options for that. Beautiful, everything nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead here and remove this cover plate and get access to this top lay shaft. Got my 2.5mm driver, and when you've got Allen drivers for this sort of thing, it really makes the job a lot easier. You'd really struggle to do this with an L-shaped or a T-bar Allen key, and it maintains the integrity of the screw head as well. Nice to see everything's still tight on this car, which is good. Nothing stripped. Okay, now I should be able to just gently prise up this lay shaft cover, like so. Just getting it up high and out of the way. Try not any dirt to fall in the gearbox. That's why it's so important that we gave it a good clean off to get all the loose dirt out of there before we proceeded. And here we have our spur gear and lay shaft. And this is the two gears, the spur gear and the pinion, that cause a lot of grief. Now you can see here it does in fact have the 54, so we do have the mesh set right. And this part here, this is called the cush drive. So I'm going to set this off to the side for the second. I'm going to move the truck over. And here we have our spur gear. Now what's really important to check is the quality of the bearings, and there's no crunchiness at all, there's no damage, which is what I really wanted to see. So I don't have to go ahead and change them. I was prepared to. I've got my Hearns bearing kit here, ready to change them, but I'll save it till next rebuild because they feel absolutely fine. I will, however, take the gear off and the pin and give everything a really nice little clean off, like so. Just grab myself a rag. Here we have. Take the opportunity, give it a bit of a, get all the dirt and debris out. The pin's in really good shape still, which is really nice to see. The gear has very minimal to no wear on it. You'd expect to see a little bit of discoloration, but there's no chunks missing. It's all been really well meshed. Indicative really of why the truck is running so well. Put that gear back on. We can put our beautiful everything on there. Now what I will do though is, while I've got it apart, is I will in fact tighten these screws up. So I'll get my 2mm, I'll just check to make sure that they're nice and tight and not rattling loose. Getting a little bit on them, but they're definitely not loose. Check the cush drive rubber. And this will ensure that it will get good life. I'm glad that I've taken the opportunity to tighten these ones up, because I could actually, they were needing a little bit of a retorque. There we go. You can see the condition of our cush drive rubber. There's no big play there. That's what you'd expect to see between the pin, and that acts like a damper there to take some of the shock load out of the transmission, absorb some of the harmonics. Fantastic. Okay, so that's as simple as that. So now we could just have to do the reverse and get it back together. So I'll bring the truck back towards me. I'll go ahead here. I've got a screw that's, here we go, I'll get my trusty 9 steps pliers out. Get that. Now I'm not going to go ahead and add any lubrication at this point. It's just not clean enough. You sort of want to avoid dropping your bearings and shaft like that. I did definitely put it in. Here we go, I've got all my parts. You want to avoid dropping anything into your gearbox casing. Let's do that second time over. The reason I'm not going to add any grease or lubrication at this point is that it's just not clean enough in there, and I don't want to introduce any dirt into the gearbox and create any crunching. We've got to make sure the gears go into their locators, the bearings. Make sure I've got a nice smooth mesh, which I do. Can just lightly do it with my finger. Go ahead and get my plastic case and put that back in. Like so. I'm actually going to give this a little bit of a dust off while it's in my hands. So we've got long screws on one side, short screws on the other. And this will just help ensure that I don't introduce any dirt and muck into the transmission whatsoever. It's got this old cleaning brush here. Bit of a wipe over. Now if I was doing a lot of mud work or planned on getting the truck very wet, I would definitely be packing and sealing this up with grease to somewhat create a gasket and seal, but I don't really like getting it too muddy, so I'm not going to do that at this point. Put the cover in, should drop back down on there nicely, and then here we go. Put the screws back in, give them a little clean out. Make sure that the tool can get all the way to the bottom of the screw head, because the important thing to remember is all the dirt and muck in here can actually stop the tool from going all the way in. So you're in fact only getting half the purchase on the screw with your tool, so you can in fact damage the screw and round it off. Go ahead, put the short screws in this side like so. Now I'm not doing them up tight as I'm installing them. I am in fact just winding them in a few turns and getting them seated, all the while trying not to drop them in the gearbox case. Get this out of here. Sorry guys. Get that little dust off and try again. Like so. Just get it in the right vicinity. Come up on top there. Now you don't ever want to rush these things. Alright, there we go. Dropped it again. I particularly don't use power tools when I work on these cars. It just doesn't do the car any favors, and I'm not generally in that much of a rush. They're not that hard to work on, and I quite enjoy it. So a bit of hand wrenching. If you do use a screwdriver, just make sure you've got it on a very low torque setting. I have seen lots of people cause a lot of damage. Generally they just strip all the threads, because you lose that bit of feeling of when it's getting tight. So again, just wind it in. They're all seated. Just working my way around the screw pattern now. Getting them, you can feel it when it seats before doing it up tight, because it like squeezes down. And then I'll turn the gears over and make sure that I've got a nice smooth mesh. Like so. Nice and smooth, there's no noise there. There's no excessive play. I'm really, really happy about that. Now I can go and tighten it down. And you can see by tightening it down, it's only half a turn on each screw. And I don't have my hold hand on there. I've really just got my thumb and my forefinger. Take the opportunity to get any dirt and debris off of the motor. Ensure that the motor case is tight. It's not going to have any slop. Good to see. And it's little things like this that will ensure that it keeps running smooth and reliable. Take the opportunity, double check the pinion. Nice big 2mm. Perfect. Now like I said, these dowels are really, really important. So make sure the holes are clean in the bottom of the motor where they have to sit on this dowel, and position the motor back into place. Like so. Should sort of pretty much fall into place and be nice and quiet. Like so. Got it nice and seated. Now I can turn the truck onto its side and get the motor mount screws done up. I'll start just by putting one in. I don't want to flip the truck upside down completely because I run the risk of dislodging the pins. So bear with me while I tip the truck away from myself. We'll get one of these screws in and started. Again, I'm not just tightening up one screw, I'll wait till they're all in, but that will save the motor from coming out and moving position on the dowel. So go ahead now and flip the whole truck over, knowing that the motor won't fall out. And I'll go ahead and locate the other 4 screws. You can see nothing's excessively tight. You really don't need to use too much force when you're working on these. And like I said, the 9 steps tool's making it really nice and easy. No screw damage. Do it up across the footprint of the motor, if you will, in a cross shape, making sure that it pulls down nice and straight. Again, I'm not doing it up to final torque yet. Just getting it nice and seated. Like this. And I'll take the opportunity now to give a little spin. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Beautiful. Got ourselves a nice gear mesh. Go ahead, put our gear cover on. And we are right to burn. 2 screws in our gear cover. 2.5 mil driver. Get this one in. Now if you do have your gear mesh wrong, you'll notice definite a lot of noise or binding, but this one spins nice and free. No untoward noise. Gear cover down. Again, we're just holding the gear cover on, so no need to be super tight. And there we go. And that is effectively how you would change and service your spur and pinion mesh. Replace your pinion gear, so if you're going to go for the high speed option, or if you're just servicing the top lay shaft and checking the bearings. So I'm Brett from Hearns, and thanks for watching me do a tutorial with the Traxxas X-MAXX.